Hello, class. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about attitudes. So we'll define what attitudes are. We will distinguish between attitudes and values. And then we're going to get into a discussion about a construct called cognitive dissonance, which was made popular by Leon Festinger back in 1962. And it has a lot to do with not only what we're going to be talking about this week, but throughout the next 11 weeks during the course. And then we're going to look a little bit at intentions, which was something researched by Adjen and Fishbein, where they looked at, okay, why would there be a disconnect maybe between what our attitudes are and what our behaviors actually are? So those are the three things that we're going to cover during this lesson. So what are attitudes? Attitudes are strong feelings or beliefs or emotions that we have regarding maybe a person or a place or an object. They're different than values because values tend to be more global in nature. These are kind of a universal values that we have versus an attitude which is more specific, right, to a person or place. And think about some of the attitudes that you have regarding maybe a certain person or a place or an object. I know I, for one, have a strong negative attitude about liver. My grandmother used to make liver when I was little, and I never liked it. And when I was old enough, I said, you know what, I have a strong feeling about liver, which is a very specific thing, right? It's not a universal, it's very specific. And I said, I'm never going to have it again. I made that one-time affirmation to myself that I had such a negative attitude about it that I have never had it since the time I was a child. We also have to keep in mind that when we're talking about attitudes, we're not talking about someone having a good attitude or a bad attitude. When we talk attitudes, we want to talk about positive attitudes and negative attitudes, okay? If you have a positive attitude about something, it means you're seeking it out. You find the good in it. You want to do it. You want to engage in it. You want to find it and seek it out. If you have a negative attitude about something, it means that you avoid it. Just like myself with the liver, eating liver, it's something that we avoid. So really, put this in the context of yourself and think about all the things that you have a negative attitude towards. A lot of times I find when I ask students this question in class, they say, look, I have a negative attitude towards math. And they tell me why. I had a teacher in third grade who did this. I had a teacher in fifth grade who said this. So over time, if you think of it as almost like a seesaw, I don't know if you can see my arms out here, but almost like a seesaw where if I have a bunch of negative experiences and I am over time developing this negative attitude towards something, in this case with the students it was math, what am I going to do? I am going to avoid that particular subject in this matter or that behavior. So I'm going to sit in the back of the class. These are some of the behaviors that I might experience. I'm going to sit in the back of the class. I'm not going to participate in class. I'm not going to invest a lot of time in my homework. I'm not going to form study groups in math. I'm not going to answer questions. These are all the behaviors that then are associated with that negative behavior. The opposite would be true if I have I have a bunch of positive experiences and develop a positive attitude towards math. I'm going to join the math club maybe. I'll sit in front of the class. I'll answer all the questions, form study groups. So do you see how your attitude, whether it's positive or negative, will dictate your behavior, whether you're seeking something out or whether you're avoiding it. The three components of an attitude are the affective component. This is a very important word to remember. We're going to be using that a lot over the course of this term. The affective component of an attitude is the feeling or the emotion part of it. Okay, the cognitive component of an attitude is the thinking part of it, and then the behavioral part of it is then what it is that I actually do. So those three components there make up an attitude. Again, the affective, the emotional part of it, where maybe somebody cuts you off in traffic I know this. I drive a lot to get to work, so I'm very familiar with this. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. The affective or emotional response might be anger, right? Might be anger. The cognitive part, the thinking part, would say, "Oh, I think that person's selfish and that person's a jerk for doing that." And then the behavioral component then is driven by that, the affective and the cognitive part. So I might try to pass them out and maybe say something as I'm passing by. Hopefully not, but that's the behavioral part then of what I do. So it's the emotional part, the affective, the cognitive, the thinking part, and then the behavior that's associated with it. Let's talk a little bit about cognitive dissonance. And again, this was made popular by Leon Festinger back in 1962. And cognitive dissonance is when you're trying to hold, and here's a simple way to think about it. When you're trying to hold two conflicting thoughts or beliefs in your mind at the same time, it actually does cause some psychological discomfort. And here it says, holding two conflicting cognitions in your head, whether it's ideas, values, or emotions. So when I'm in class, a lot of times I just ask students, who in the class smokes? And even a couple of students might still raise their hand. And I would say, you smoke, but you do know smoking's bad for you, right? There's been enough research that would lead one to believe that smoking could lead to health issues. It could lead to high blood pressure. It could lead to cardiac disease. It could lead to certain kind of cancers. This is what the research has demonstrated. So I say, why do you still smoke? And the answers I get are consistent across classes through the years. Students will say something like, well, I'm still young and I have time to quit. And if I quit, I won't have any long-term effects of smoking. They'll say something like, my grandmother smoked for 100 years. Not 100 years. My grandmother was 100 when she died. And maybe she smoked for 80 years and she was fine. Somebody might say, well, if I quit smoking, it means I'm going to start eating. And if I eat, I'll become overweight. And that's also unhealthy. And then someone might say stress. It helps me with stress and it helps me deal with stress. So you see what people are trying to do. They have these two conflicting ideas or values or emotions in their head. And what they need to do is they need to somehow rationalize that, or it's going to cause them a lot of discomfort. So, you could change your attitude or behavior or both, belittle the importance of that inconsistent behavior, which a lot of the students were doing, or find more consonant elements that outweigh the dissonant ones. So again, the dissonant is that disruptive or that the uncomfortable feeling that you get with those two conflicting thoughts or ideas. So that's cognitive dissonance. This research was even taken a little farther by Adjin and Fishbein, and what they were saying was, okay, people might have discrepancies, I guess we could say, between their attitudes and their actual behaviors. But what's causing that? And what their research showed was that it was really the intentions that played a moderating or had a mediating impact on what the behavior was. So really, to them, it really boiled down to what the intentions were that led to the behavior. So let's kind of look at this model and describe a little bit about what's going on and maybe how you could apply it or how I would apply it even to a situation maybe like in school. So what we have is our attitude towards the behavior, subjective norms, and perceived behavioral control, all influencing our intentions, which are going to influence the actual behavior that we do, if that makes sense. So we have these three attitudinal components that impact our intentions, and then it's our intentions that dictate our behavior. So again, the first one, our attitude towards the behavior. What are those feelings or emotions that we have towards the actual behavior that we're doing? So let's say something like studying for class. I don't like to study for class. Okay, well, let's try and change your attitude about that intention to do it. I don't intend to study because it takes up time, and I don't know if it's going to help me at all. So let's influence that attitude towards the behavior, and that'll change your intention. The second will be subjective norms. What are the social pressures? What are the social norms that are going on that would influence the behavior? So if we make you aware that, hey, other students in the class are studying hard, they're doing all the work, they're succeeding, it might change your intentions to go ahead and try to study. And then perceived behavioral control. There we're looking at what can be done. What are some strategies we could take to make that behavior a little easier? So hey, look, we're going to form some study groups within the groups. We're going to have a mentor, or we're going to have some kind of help outside of class that's going to help you. So you could actually control it. You're not on your own. We're going to be able to control that behavior somewhat. So if we address all three of these things, it'll influence your intentions, which of course is then on the other side going to influence your behavior.